I've been on the road, no sleep all night. Heart stacking up these beds to the sunrise. Told them I came up by the cold line. So nothing to it all, it's the glow. Told them I was down, but I rise up, ride up. Never switch lanes, I just ride up, ride up. Hit the block, then I fly off.
Some stories aren't told to entertain us. Some stories aren't told to teach us. And then there are the stories people refuse to tell after the sun goes down. Welcome to Nye After Dark. I'm Nye, and every week I'll take you into a world where folklore, urban legends, forgotten places, and the unexplained blur the line between fiction and fear. Tonight's story is a work of fiction inspired by myths, legends, and the mysteries that have haunted imaginations for generations. So before we begin, dim the lights, silence your phone, get comfortable, if you can, because once tonight's story begins, there's no turning back. Now let's step into the darkness. Don't whistle at the Duende. The old house sat alone at the edge of Blackwood Forest, where the trees grew so close together they swallowed the sunlight long before evening arrived. Locals avoided the place. Delivery drivers refused to stop after dusk. Even hunters refused to venture beyond the rusted iron gate once the shadows stretched across the dirt road. When 28-year-old Elena Morales inherited the property from her grandmother Rosa, she assumed every story she'd ever heard about the house was nothing more than folklore meant to keep curious children away from the woods. The roof leaked, the porch leaned, every floorboard groaned beneath her feet. It was exactly the kind of fixer-upper she wanted. The attorney handed her the keys along with a faded envelope tucked inside the will. Across the front were 4 words written in trembling handwriting. Read before sunset. Inside was a single page. Elena, if you're reading this, I'm gone. If you've decided to keep the house, there are only 3 rules. If you hear knocking beneath the floor, don't answer it. If you hear laughter outside your window, don't look. And whatever happens, never whistle after sunset, promise me. Elena smiled to herself. Her grandmother had adored ghost stories. She folded the letter, placed it inside a kitchen drawer, and never thought about it again. The first 3 nights were quiet. Almost too quiet. On the 4th morning, she found tiny muddy footprints leading across the hardwood floor. They began at the front door, crossed the living room, circled the dining table, then vanished at the fireplace. There were no matching footprints leaving the room. She searched every corner of the house. Nothing. The following day, her spare keys disappeared. Then every coin she'd left on the kitchen counter. The television remote turned up inside the refrigerator. Her favorite coffee mug somehow ended up sitting in the attic. Each time she blamed herself. Until the toys appeared. The first was a tiny wooden horse, sitting perfectly centered on the porch. The next morning it was joined by a carved bird. The next day a spinning top. Then a small faceless doll no taller than her hand. When she asked the elderly cashier at the only general store for miles if neighborhood children had been leaving toys at her house, the woman's smile faded. You inherited Rosa's place? Elena nodded. The old woman quietly crossed herself. They've started bringing you gifts? Who? The Duende. Elena laughed. I don't believe in stories. You don't have to. The old woman lowered her voice. He only cares if he believes in you. That evening, Elena tried convincing herself everyone in town had simply shared the same strange superstition. She unpacked boxes until the attic became too cluttered to walk through. As she dragged an old trunk across the floor, dust exploded into the air. Without thinking, she whistled. Just a short tune she'd heard her grandmother sing 100 times. The sound echoed through the attic. Then everything stopped. Not quiet, silent. The wind disappeared. The insects stopped chirping. The trees outside froze as if the entire forest had forgotten how to breathe. Elena slowly lowered the trunk. Her heartbeat suddenly sounded impossibly loud. Then she heard it. A whistle. The exact same tune. Not outside, not upstairs. Directly beneath her feet. The attic floor answered her. She stumbled backward. The whistle came again, closer, slow, patient, almost playful. Then 3 soft knocks echoed beneath the floorboards. Knock, knock, knock. She remembered the letter. If you hear knocking beneath the floor, don't answer it. For several minutes, she stood frozen, refusing to move. Eventually, the knocking stopped. The forest came back to life. Crickets sang again. Leaves rustled. The spell had broken, or so she thought. At exactly 3:13 the following morning, scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound came from directly beneath her bed. She held her breath. Tiny footsteps circled underneath her, tap, tap, tap. Then came a giggle, not loud, not evil, just a child's laugh. A tiny voice whispered through the wood beneath her mattress. Elena squeezed her eyes shut. She refused to look. Eventually, the footsteps faded away. Morning couldn't come fast enough. The next day, she nailed every loose board she could find. She checked beneath the house. Nothing, no tunnels, no animals, no sign that anyone or anything could have been underneath her bedroom. That night, 3:13, scratch tap, giggle, come play. Night after night, it continued. Each morning, she woke somewhere different. Once she found herself asleep in the hallway. Another time, at the bottom of the staircase. A week later, she woke barefoot on the front porch. Mud covered the bottoms of her feet. She hadn't remembered leaving her room. Then it got worse. One morning, she opened her eyes beneath a towering oak deep inside Blackwood Forest. Her nightgown was soaked with dew. Her feet were cut from walking over roots and stone. She had no idea how she'd gotten there. She ran home without looking back. That afternoon, she searched every room again. This time, she noticed something she'd missed before. One floorboard beneath her grandmother's old rocking chair was newer than the rest. She pried it open. Inside lay a leather journal wrapped in cloth. The first page read, "If you're reading this, it heard you whistle." Elena's hands trembled. The journal described decades of strange happenings. The toys, the missing coins, the laughter, the footsteps. Every entry ended with the same sentence: never answer. The final pages became increasingly desperate. It doesn't want the house, it wants permission. If it asks you to play, remain silent. If it whistles, never whistle back. If it reaches your door, do not invite it inside. That night, Elena refused to sleep. She sat in bed, gripping her grandmother's journal, while every light in the house burned. Midnight came, 1 o'clock, 2, 3. At exactly 3:13, nothing, no scratching, no footsteps, no giggling. The silence frightened her more than the sounds ever had. Then tap, tap, tap. Tiny footsteps echoed down the hallway, not beneath the floor anymore. Inside the house, walking toward her bedroom. Each step was slow, deliberate, as though whatever had been beneath the house had finally decided to come upstairs. The footsteps stopped outside her bedroom door. The old brass doorknob turned. Very slowly. The hinges groaned. The door opened only a few inches. In the darkness, she saw two pale yellow eyes staring at her. They sat no higher than the height of a small child. A tiny smile appeared beneath them. Then the whisper came, soft enough to mistake for the wind. "You whistled?" The smile widened. "Now you belong to me." The bedroom door slowly creaked open. Then the journal slipped from Elena's hands. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed every corner of the bedroom. The lamps still glowed somewhere behind the blackness, but their light seemed unable to reach her. Elena couldn't see her own hands. She could only hear the slow creak of old floorboards as whatever had entered the room began to move. One step, then another. Tiny feet, bare feet. Each step carried the soft sound of damp soil pressing against aged wood. Tap, tap, tap. The footsteps circled her bed, once, twice, 3 times. Then they stopped directly beside her. The silence was unbearable. Elena kept her eyes shut. She remembered every warning. Don't answer, don't look, don't whistle. A tiny breath brushed against her cheek. So lonely. The voice sounded like a child trying to remember how to whisper. So long. Another pause. No one plays anymore. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to remain still. The voice moved to the opposite side of the bed without a single footstep. "You broke the rule." "Nothing. You called me." Nothing, I answered. Still she remained silent. A low chuckle echoed through the room. Not cruel, almost amused. You remember Rosa? Elena's eyes fluttered. How did it know her grandmother's name? The voice continued. She remembered, too. For the first time since the lights disappeared, Elena felt something slide across the mattress. Not climbing, not crawling, simply settling at the foot of the bed, waiting. The room filled with the smell of wet earth and cedar. Leaves rustled somewhere inside the walls. The whistle came again. The exact tune she'd carelessly whistled in the attic. It floated around the room as though the house itself had learned the melody. The tune stopped. Silence. Then a single knock from beneath the bed. Knock. Another from inside the bedroom closet. Knock. Another from somewhere behind the bedroom wall. Do not speak to it. Do not follow it. Wait for dawn. The page snapped shut. The room went black again. The tiny voice laughed softly. You should have read that sooner. The footsteps resumed. This time they weren't circling the bed. They were circling her, faster, tap, 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 until they became impossible to count. The room spun. The walls disappeared. When Elena opened her eyes, she was no longer in her bedroom. She stood barefoot in the middle of Blackwood Forest. Moonlight poured through the branches. The old house was gone. The trees stretched endlessly in every direction. Children's laughter drifted between the trunks. Then she saw them. Tiny wooden toys, hundreds of them, hanging from branches, resting on roots, floating in shallow pools of rainwater. Every toy she'd found at the house, along with hundreds more. A small figure stood beneath the ancient oak at the center of the clearing. It was impossibly small, no taller than a soda can. Its pointed cap hid most of its face. Only its amber eyes reflected the moonlight. It held out a beautifully carved wooden whistle. Take it. Elena didn't move. Take it and you'll never be alone again. She remained silent. The figure tilted its head. Around the clearing, the wooden toys slowly turned to face her. Tiny carved eyes, tiny carved smiles, every one of them, watching, waiting. The figure extended the whistle farther. You called me. Nothing. You owe me. Nothing. Its smile slowly faded. The forest grew colder. The laughter disappeared. Even the wind seemed to retreat. For the first time, the figure looked disappointed, then angry. The amber eyes darkened. The ground beneath Elena's feet trembled. Roots burst through the earth, twisting around her ankles. The trees groaned. The whistle slipped from the creature's hand and landed at Elena's feet. It waited. One choice, one touch, one invitation. Elena stared at the whistle. Then she remembered something her grandmother used to tell her as a little girl. Some doors stay closed because you refuse to open them. Without speaking, Elena stepped backward, away from the whistle. The roots loosened. The creature's smile vanished completely. A deafening scream echoed through the forest, not from the creature, but from every tree surrounding them. The sound shook the leaves. The hanging toys began falling from the branches, one after another, hundreds of them crashing into the forest floor. The figure slowly stepped backward into the shadow of the great oak. Its amber eyes never left Elena. As the first rays of sunrise broke over the horizon, the shadows retreated. The forest dissolved, the trees faded, the laughter disappeared. Elena gasped. She was back in her bedroom. Morning sunlight streamed through the window. The lights were on again. The bedroom door stood wide open. The journal rested in her lap. For a long moment she simply sat there, convinced it had all been a nightmare. Then she looked down. Mud covered her feet. Fresh oak leaves lay scattered across the bedroom floor. And resting on her pillow was a tiny wooden whistle. Her heart sank. Very slowly she picked it up. Carved into the side were 4 tiny words. Thank you for playing. Elena carried the whistle and every wooden toy she'd collected into Blackwood Forest that afternoon. Deep beneath the ancient oak, she found a circle of weathered stones hidden beneath the roots. Without a word, she placed every carving inside the circle. She laid the whistle on top. Then she walked away. She never looked back. The strange happening stopped. No more footprints. No more missing coins. No more laughter beneath the floor. Years passed. The house was restored. People still whispered about Rose's place at the edge of Blackwood Forest. Some claimed the stories had finally ended. Others insisted they still heard a child laughing whenever the sun disappeared behind the trees. Elena never argued with either of them. Whenever someone asked if the legends were true, she gave the same answer her grandmother would have. Whether you believe the stories doesn't matter, she'd say with a smile. Just remember the rules. Years passed. Elena restored the old house, just as Rosa had always dreamed. The strange happenings never returned. No more muddy footprints, no more missing coins, no more laughter beneath the floorboards. To anyone passing by, it was simply an old house, standing quietly at the edge of Blackwood Forest. But Elena knew better. Some things don't disappear. They simply wait. One crisp autumn morning, a moving truck rumbled down the old dirt road. The cabin across the creek, empty for years, finally had new owners. While his parents unpacked, their little boy wandered toward the woods. Curiosity had always gotten the better of him. Near the roots of the great oak, something caught his eye. Half buried beneath a blanket of fallen leaves rested a beautifully carved wooden horse. He brushed the dirt away and smiled. "This is awesome." Somewhere deep beneath the forest floor, 3 soft knocks echoed through the earth. Knock, knock, knock. The boy looked around. "Who's there?" The forest answered with a soft whistle. The same simple tune, almost playful. The little boy smiled. "Are you hiding?" From behind one of the massive roots of the ancient oak, a tiny figure slowly emerged into the moonlight. It was impossibly small, no taller than a soda can. Its clothes looked as though they had been stitched from moss and faded cloth. A tiny pointed cap rested on its head, and beneath it 2 warm amber eyes sparkled with childlike curiosity and an ancient wisdom far older than the forest itself. It wasn't frightening. It looked lonely. The tiny figure climbed onto the weathered tree root so the little boy could see it more clearly. Then it smiled and held out the wooden horse. "You found my toy," it whispered. The little boy held it up. "Can I keep it?" The tiny smile grew wider. "Only if you'll play with me." The boy laughed. "Okay." The tiny figure stretched out one impossibly small hand. Without fear, without hesitation, the little boy reached down and gently took it between his fingers. The instant it touched, the wind disappeared. The birds stopped singing. The forest fell completely silent. Leaves drifted slowly from the trees, as though time itself had paused. Then the shadows closed around them. By the time the boy's mother called his name, there was no answer. His father searched the yard, then the woods. Neighbors joined the search before sunset. By morning, the sheriff had volunteers combing every trail through Blackwood Forest. They found no footprints, no torn clothing, and no sign the little boy had ever been there. Only one thing rested beneath the great oak: the beautifully carved wooden horse. Beside it sat a brand new wooden carving, small and perfectly detailed. It was a little boy wearing the same jacket the missing boy was wearing that morning. Its tiny wooden face wore a peaceful smile. The people of Blackwood Forest searched for weeks, then months. Eventually, they stopped saying the little boy was missing. Instead, they began saying the forest had chosen another child. Elena never returned to the great oak. She didn't have to. She already knew the truth. The Duende had never chased her. It had only offered an invitation. She survived because Rosa had warned her never to accept it. The little boy never had that chance. And if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of Blackwood Forest and you hear someone whistle your name or 3 soft knocks beneath your feet, remember the rules, because some invitations are never meant to be accepted. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think happened to the little boy after he accepted the Duende's invitation? Do you believe Elena truly broke the cycle? Or do you think the Duende was simply waiting for someone else to come along? And be honest, if you had heard those 3 knocks beneath your floor, or a tiny voice inviting you to play, would you have followed the rules? Share your thoughts, theories, and even your own spooky experiences in the comments below. I read your comments, and your ideas might inspire a future episode of Nye After Dark. And remember, some warnings are passed down for a reason. The question is, would you listen? Zit je?
I was on them broke nights, now I'm on them bands nights. Started off with nothing, now I'm smashing broad lights. Never thought I'd see the day, I'm counting up all white. Put my plate into the